I was 48 when I buried my husband. I noticed her before I noticed the casket. She was sitting in the front row at St. Thomas like she belonged there, not standing quietly in the back with the distant co-workers and the people who only knew him from Christmas cards. Front row. Close enough to reach out and touch the flowers. Close enough to look like she had a right to be first. She was younger than me, late 30s, polished, calm in a way that made my skin prickle. Two teenagers sat beside her, dressed like they'd rehearsed grief in the mirror. The boy leaned forward and whispered, not even trying to keep it private, Dad hated lilies. He told her that. Her. That was me. I stood there in black, holding the program with my husband's name on it, while strangers corrected the way I mourned him. The organ was playing. The light through the stained glass was soft and beautiful and completely wrong. My hands shook so hard I could barely keep the paper from tearing. I'd slept maybe 40 minutes since the call. I was running on air and shock, and the kind of denial that feels like a physical drug. And then she turned and looked at me. She scanned me like a price tag. Not curious. Not apologetic. Measuring. I took one step forward, because that's what you do. You move toward the thing you can't understand, like if you get close enough the shape will finally make sense. She smiled. Small. Controlled. When I got within a few feet, she said softly, almost kindly, we should talk after. About the estate. The word estate landed in the church like a slap. A few heads turned. Phones came out, not openly, but I saw the motion. People adjusting their coats. People suddenly remembering they had messages. Then she added, just loud enough for the front pews to hear, he promised us everything. He stayed with you because it was easier. We were his real family. At my husband's funeral, in front of his colleagues, his board, our friends, people who'd eaten at my table. I felt my face go hot, then cold. The kind of cold that comes when your body decides it's better not to feel anything at all. The teenagers beside her watched me with matching expressions. Not grief, expectation, like they were waiting for a performance. I remember thinking, very clearly, this is either the worst moment of my life or the moment they destroy themselves. Because the way she said it wasn't the way someone says something painful, because they can't hold it anymore. It was the way someone says something painful because they enjoy watching it land. And I hadn't even spoken yet. My husband's casket sat there, closed and perfect and heavy, the front of the church filled with flowers and money and quiet power. I could see faces I recognized from charity galas, from the Met, from those dinners where people ask what you do but they really mean what you're worth. And there she was, acting like she'd been invited to the center of my life. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't make the scene she was daring me to make. I just looked at her. I let the silence hang for one beat too long. Then I turned my eyes to the teenagers and said, "Calm, I'm sorry for your loss." That's when she leaned in, close enough that only I could hear the next part. "You don't have to do the widow act with me," she murmured. "He would have never needed me if you could have satisfied him. He chose me because you were the mistake he couldn't get rid of." She said it like she was telling me the weather. Then she straightened up, put the polite face back on, and turned toward the casket again. I stood there in a church full of people, holding my husband's funeral program, and realized I didn't know the man I'd married. Or worse, I knew him. I just hadn't known what he'd allowed to grow in the shadows. And while she sat there playing wife in the front row, she had no idea who she was talking to. She had no idea what I controlled. Not yet. If you're the kind of person who's ever been humiliated in public by someone who thought you'd stay quiet, or you've ever watched a family rewrite you like you're an inconvenience, go ahead and hit like and subscribe now. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because I already know this is going to pull people out of the woodwork. Because what they did next, they did it on purpose. The service ended. People filed out into the bright cold air of Fifth Avenue, their faces set in the practiced mask of polite grief. I shook hands I didn't want to shake. I accepted condolences that felt like dust. I stood still while people called me strong, like strength was something you chose. And all the while, I could feel her. Not behind me. near me, close, like a predator that doesn't rush because it's already decided the outcome. At the reception afterward, in that hushed room full of catered food no one ate, she appeared at my elbow with the same small smile. Up close, she looked even more sure of herself, not nervous, not shaky, not uncertain. I noticed details I wouldn't have noticed on any other day. A manicure done yesterday, not today. A watch that had no business being on someone who was supposedly a secret. A diamond band that wasn't mine. She nodded toward the table where my husband's friends stood in clusters, murmuring. Elliot hated these things, she said, like she was reminiscing. He said funerals are for optics. I turned my head slowly. Who are you? Her smile widened a fraction, like she'd been waiting for me to finally ask. Tessa, she said. Tessa Vale. Then she tilted her head toward the teenagers. And that's Mason and Elle. My throat tightened on instinct, because naming them made them real in a way I wasn't ready for. Mason's eyes flicked over me with a kind of bored disdain that made my stomach twist. He wasn't looking at me like a grieving widow. He was looking at me like a woman standing in the way of a payout. Elle didn't even pretend. She whispered to her brother, and both of them smiled. Tessa leaned closer. I'm not here to fight, she said softly. I'm here to settle things respectfully. Elliot wanted this handled cleanly. Respectfully, I repeated, because the word tasted strange. She glanced down at my hands, my ring, my black dress, my posture. Then she said, very quietly, you can keep the sympathy. We'll take the money. I stared at her. She held my gaze without blinking, and then she did it again. Another personal dig, like she was stacking them on purpose. He used to say you were nice, she murmured. Nice women are easy to keep around. They don't ask for passion. They don't ask questions. They just maintain the house, maintain the image. My vision sharpened at the edges. She smiled like she was doing me a favor. You know what he called you when he was with me? She asked. The paperwork. I felt something in my chest crack not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to let something colder seep in. I didn't answer. I didn't give her the satisfaction, so she kept going. He didn't divorce you because he didn't want to lose half, she said. He stayed because you were cheaper than freedom. You were the mistake he couldn't undo. Then she straightened and said, at normal volume, I'm sorry for your loss. As if we'd just discussed flowers. A woman nearby gasped softly, like she'd overheard something without meaning to. Tessa glanced at her, unbothered. Then she turned back to me and lowered her voice again. Our attorney will contact you today, she said. We already have the documents. You should prepare yourself. Elliot didn't leave you what you think he left you. I finally spoke because I needed one sentence, one anchor. You're doing this at his funeral, I said. She shrugged, delicate and cruel. He's not here to stop it, is he? Then she walked away, not hurried, not guilty, like she was leaving a restaurant after dessert. I stood there, surrounded by people and money and grief, and watched a woman I'd never met behave like she owned my husband's life. And that was when the first real what hit me, sharp and specific. Those kids weren't little. They were teenagers, which meant this wasn't a fling. This was a parallel life that had been running long enough to grow confident, long enough to grow entitled, long enough to show up in the front row like the main character. That night, I went back to our penthouse on the Upper East Side. The doorman, Reuben, looked like he'd been crying. He'd worked our building for 15 years. He'd watched my husband hand him holiday bonuses that could have paid for someone's entire life. Ms. Rosen, he said, voice thick. I'm so sorry. I nodded like a person. Thank you. The elevator doors closed and I stared at my reflection in the mirrored wall. My eyes looked older than they had that morning. My face was composed in a way that didn't match the inside of my body. When I stepped out onto my floor, I saw the first sign that she wasn't bluffing. 2 men in dark suits stood near my door. Not building security, not staff, legal. One held a folder. And Tessa was there, leaning casually against the wall like she was waiting for a friend. Mason and Elle sat on the bench by the elevator, scrolling on their phones like they were at an airport. Reuben had let her up, or someone had. My stomach dropped. Tessa smiled. Good. You're home. I walked toward her slowly. Get off my floor. She clicked her tongue, like I was being difficult. I'm trying to keep this civil, she said, but you're making it hard. She nodded at the folder in the man's hands. This is a notice, she said. For access, for inventory, for personal property. I stared at the folder like it was a joke. You're trespassing, I said. Tessa lifted her brows. Am I? She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Expensive. Confident. I know you think being the wife means you're the gatekeeper, she murmured. But you're not. You were the cover, that's all. Then she leaned in, and her voice went lower. And before you do the righteous thing, save it. He didn't want you. He didn't crave you. He tolerated you. I gave him what you couldn't. My hands curled into fists so tight my nails bit my skin. Mason looked up and snorted, like he was watching something entertaining. Elle whispered, ew, and giggled. Tessa smiled and didn't move. You can have the apartment for now, she said. We're not monsters. But you don't touch the safe. You don't touch his office. You don't touch the accounts. Those belong to us. I took a slow breath. You're not getting anything tonight, I said. Get out. The legal man cleared his throat. Ma'am, we're just here to deliver leave, I repeated. Tessa's eyes hardened. Fine, she said. Be dramatic. She stepped back and raised her voice just enough that the building's hallway cameras would catch it. I offered to do this peacefully, she said. You refused. Then she looked at me like she wanted to carve the moment into my skin. We'll do it the hard way, she said. And then she turned to the doorman camera and smiled, like she was already planning to use it. When the elevator doors closed behind them, I stood in the hallway for a long moment, my keys still in my hand. I didn't cry, not because I was strong, because my body had moved past crying and into something else, something sharper. Something that wasn't going to save anyone's feelings. Inside the apartment, the silence hit me like a physical wall. Elliot's coat still hung in the closet. His shoes sat lined up like he'd come home and simply evaporated. I walked into his office, and that's when I saw the second sign. One of the desk drawers had been forced. Just slightly. Not smashed, not obvious, careful. Someone had been in here. I stood there staring at the drawer, and a calm thought slid into my mind. They've already started. This wasn't grief. This was a takeover. I called my attorney. Not the family friend. Not the social one who handled charity filings and cocktail napkin agreements. I called the one Elliot always teased me about because she scared him. Dana Park. She picked up on the second ring. Danica, she said. I was waiting. I swallowed. There's a woman. She showed up at the funeral. She says she's a parallel claimant, Dana said. Yeah. My blood went cold. You know? I know enough, she said. Listen carefully. Do not sign anything. Do not let anyone into the residence. Do not allow access to the safe. Do you understand me? Yes. Dana exhaled once, controlled. Good, she said. Because if she's doing this already, she's either bluffing or she has forged documents. Forged. The word rang in my head like a bell. Dana continued. I'm coming to you in the morning. Tonight, lock everything. Call building security. And Danica, stop thinking like a widow, she said. Start thinking like a target. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen island with a glass of water I never drank, staring at nothing, replaying Tessa's words in my head like they were an infection. The paperwork, the cover, the mistake he couldn't undo. At around 3 a.m, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Elliot's personal email account. A login attempt, from a device I didn't recognize. Then another. Then another. Someone was trying to break in. I stared at the screen and felt that cold thing inside me settle into place like it had found its home. At the time, I thought that was the worst thing that would happen. I was wrong. By 8 a.m., Dana was in my apartment, hair in a sleek knot, eyes sharp, carrying a slim laptop and a folder like she'd been born holding evidence. Behind her came another woman, older, silver-haired, wearing a tailored coat, and the kind of expression that says she's seen every ugly version of money. "This is Marcia Feldman," Dana said. "Forensic accountant. She used to work for the government. Now she ruins people for a living." Marcia nodded once. "Morning." I managed a tight smile. "Do I want to know how much this costs?" Marcia's mouth twitched. "Cheaper than losing everything." Dana sat at my table like she owned it, then slid her folder toward me. "Tell me exactly what happened," she said. So I did. The front row, the estate line in church, the hallway ambush, the insults. When I repeated the part about satisfy him, Dana's eyes flashed with something like disgust. "That's good," she said. I blinked. "It's good? It's motive," Dana said. "It's malice. It's her telling you, in plain language, that she wants to humiliate you. That matters. People like her don't stop at money. They want the story." Marcia opened her laptop. "Do you have access to his devices?" I hesitated. "His phone was with him when he hospital," Dana said. "We'll request it." Then Dana leaned forward. "Danica, did Elliot ever say anything that suggested—" She paused, choosing words. "That he was being managed? Pressured? That someone was moving pieces around him?" I stared at her. No. Then I remembered something small. A line Elliot had said months ago at a dinner I barely remembered. Tessa's name hadn't been spoken. But he'd said, half joking, half not, "If I die suddenly, half of Manhattan will show up pretending they loved me." I'd rolled my eyes at the time. Now, it felt like a warning. Dana stood and walked into Elliot's office. She opened the damaged drawer carefully and examined the edges. "Someone forced this," she said. My stomach tightened. "So she's been here before." Dana looked back at me. "Or someone she paid." Marcia tapped keys on her laptop. "Let's start with what we can control," she said. "Accounts. Trusts. Holdings." I let out a bitter laugh. "I don't even know where to start." Dana's gaze held mine. "That's the point," she said. "They're betting you won't." She pulled out her phone and made a call I couldn't hear fully. Then she hung up and looked at me. "Your husband's executive assistant is on her way," she said. "She called me at 6 a.m. She says she has something for you." "His assistant?" I repeated. Dana nodded. "And before you ask, no, she's not supposed to be loyal to you. But apparently she is." 30 minutes later, Addison arrived. Early 30s, crisp suit, eyes red like she'd cried in her car and then forced herself to become professional. She looked at me like she didn't know whether to hug me or salute. "I'm sorry," she said, voice cracking. "Thank you," I managed. She glanced at Dana, then back at me, then reached into her bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. "He told me to give you this if anything happened to him," she said. My throat tightened. "When?" "2 weeks ago," Addison said. "He didn't say why. He just looked tired, and he said, 'If anyone asks for access, do not give it, not even if they threaten you.'" Dana's eyes sharpened. "Anyone?" Addison swallowed. "He said, especially her." My fingers trembled as I took the envelope. The seal was unbroken. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded neatly. Elliot's handwriting. "Danica, if you're reading this, it means my life has turned into a mess I didn't fix in time. You control Rosenarcher Holdings. You are the managing member as of today. All trusteeship powers move to you immediately. Dana has the filings. Do not let anyone rush you. If a woman named Tessa Vale appears and says she has documents, assume fraud, assume theft, assume she will go for humiliation first and money second." "I'm sorry." My hands went cold. Dana watched my face. "What does it say?" I slid the paper toward her without speaking. Dana read it once, then again. Then she looked up, calm in a way that scared me more than panic. "Okay," she said. "Now we move." That should have made me feel relief. It didn't, because in that moment I realized something worse. Elliot knew. Elliot knew she would come for me like this. He'd anticipated it, which meant he'd lived with it, allowed it. And now I was the one standing in the aftermath, having to clean it up with my name and my face and my grief. Marcia tapped her screen. "I'm seeing activity," she said. Dana moved beside her. "What kind?" Marcia's eyes narrowed. "Someone tried to initiate a beneficiary change on one of the brokerage accounts 3 days ago. It's flagged as pending review." 3 days ago. Elliot wasn't even in the ground. Dana's jaw tightened. "How much money?" Marcia scrolled. 6.2 million in liquid assets, plus another account with... Jesus. She turned the screen slightly toward us. 87 million in a holding vehicle. I stared at the number and felt nothing except a strange, nauseating clarity. This is what they came for. Dana leaned in. "Who initiated the change?" Marcia clicked. "Submitted electronically. The request used credentials tied to Danica." My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I didn't." Dana's voice turned iron. "They're impersonating you." Addison sucked in a breath. "Oh my God." Dana looked at me. "This is not a family dispute," she said. "This is a crime." And right on cue, my phone buzzed again. A call from an unknown number. I stared at it. Then it stopped. Then it buzzed again. I answered, because some part of me wanted to hear the next move. Tessa's voice slid into my ear like silk. "Good morning," she said. "I hope you slept." I didn't. I gripped the phone. "Stop contacting me." She laughed softly. "Don't be like that. We're about to be connected for the rest of our lives." I didn't speak. She lowered her voice. "By the way," she said, "your building staff is very sweet. They really believe you're the only one who mattered. It's almost adorable." My hand tightened. Then she delivered it, like she couldn't resist. "He used to complain about you," she murmured. "How cold you were. How dutiful. How dry. He said intimacy with you felt like signing paperwork." I closed my eyes. I heard Dana's voice in my head. "Humiliation first." Tessa continued, "But don't worry. You'll get to keep the widow title. We're not taking that. We're taking the money, the home, the life, the legacy." She paused. "And if you fight us, I'll make sure everyone knows why he needed me." I opened my eyes and looked at Dana. Dana held out her hand, palm up. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the table. Dana leaned in slightly, voice calm, professional. "Tessa Vale?" Dana asked. "This is Dana Park, counsel to Danica Rosen." There was a beat of silence. Then Tessa's tone changed. Still confident, but sharper. "Oh," she said. So the wife brought back up. Dana didn't flinch. "You are hereby instructed to cease contact. Any further communication will be routed through counsel. Any attempts to access accounts, property, or assets will be treated as criminal interference." Tessa laughed. "Criminal? Sweetheart, you can't arrest me for telling the truth." Dana's voice didn't rise. "We can arrest you for fraud." Another beat. Then Tessa's voice turned colder. "You want fraud?" she said. "Let's talk about fraud. Your client has been posing as his wife for years. She knew. She stayed. She liked the money too much to leave." My stomach twisted. Dana replied, even. "Interesting claim. We'll look forward to your documentation." Tessa's voice sharpened. "Oh, I have documentation. I have a will. I have signed papers. I have witnesses. I have children he loved." Dana smiled slightly, like she'd just heard the click of a trap closing. "Wonderful," Dana said. "Please send it." Tessa paused. "We will." Dana leaned closer to the phone. "And Tessa? You might want to stop speaking about children he loved like they're a legal instrument." Tessa scoffed. "They're not an instrument. They're the reason he had a life worth living." Then she said the next part, the part that removed any last shred of ambiguity. "You know what I think?" she murmured. "I think you're going to fold. Because women like her always do. She's been folding her entire life." I stared at the phone. Tessa sighed theatrically. "Give my condolences to the paperwork," and then she hung up. Addison looked like she might cry. "How can someone?" Dana held up a hand. "Don't waste emotion," she said. Use it. Marcia was still scrolling, eyes hard. I'm seeing something else, Marcia said. Dana turned. What? Marcia angled the laptop toward us. A wire transfer attempt. $8,700,000. Initiated at 2:11 a.m. From an account tied to the holding company. My name was on the authorization line. But the IP address wasn't mine. Dana stared at the screen, then at me. This is it, she said quietly. This was the rule-changing moment. Not grief, not betrayal. A live theft in motion. They weren't waiting for probate. They were trying to rip the money out before anyone could stop them. And suddenly the story wasn't about my husband's secrets. It was about what they were willing to do to win. Marcia's fingers moved fast. If we lock this down, they'll know we've seen it, she said. They'll scatter. Dana's eyes narrowed. Or we let them try again, she said. Addison blinked. Let them? Dana looked at me. Danica, she said, do you want them gone quietly, or do you want them destroyed? My chest tightened. I thought of the church, the front row. The way Tessa's smile didn't move when she said real family. I thought of the hallway outside my own door. The teenagers laughing. The word paperwork. I looked at Dana. I want it witnessed, I said. Dana nodded once. Good. Because here's the truth. People like Tessa don't fear consequences they can't see. They fear exposure. They fear authority. They fear being laughed at the way they laughed at you. Dana made calls. Not dramatic calls. Efficient ones. She contacted the bank's fraud division and instructed them to flag but not block, to allow a second attempt under monitored conditions. Marcia initiated a forensic sweep of every account, every login, every vendor payment Elliot had signed in the last 2 years. Addison agreed to give Dana access to Elliot's corporate calendar and email archives. And I sat there listening, feeling something settle in me like a decision that had been waiting a long time. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to let them build their own case. Over the next 48 hours, the what moments came in steady, sickening waves. A luxury townhouse in Tribeca, rented under a Shell LLC, paid for by a corporate consulting contract that led back to Tessa. A private school tuition stream for Mason and Elle, routed through a foundation account that wasn't supposed to touch personal expenses. A second phone line on Elliot's corporate plan, labeled under a fake employee name. A set of keys issued for our Hamptons house, not to staff, to Tessa. And the most insulting detail of all? A seating chart in Elliot's email drafts for a charity gala next month, already planned, already formatted. Tessa was listed as primary guest, not as a donor, not as a +1, primary. Dana stared at that email draft with quiet fury. She was planning to step into your life, she said. I nodded slowly. She already did. At the funeral. Marcia looked up from her laptop. I've got vendor invoices, she said. Fake consulting payments. Looks like she was siphoning from the company. Dana's eyes sharpened. How much? Marcia scrolled, then whistled softly. Over 2 years? Somewhere between 9 and 11 million. Addison pressed a hand to her mouth. Oh my. Dana looked at me. That's federal, she said. Wire fraud. Tax issues. Identity theft if she used your name. I should have felt dizzy. Instead, I felt something close to vindication. Because she wasn't just insulting me. She was stealing. Stealing in a way the law actually cares about. The next morning, we got the hook we needed. The bank called. Attempted wire transfer. Same amount. Same account. Different destination. And this time, the name on the receiving account was careless. TV Consulting Group. Dana smiled, small and sharp. She's getting impatient. Marcia nodded. We can trace it. Dana turned to me. This is your mid-story pivot, she said quietly, like she was speaking to the part of me that could still think in structure. This is where it stops being personal and becomes prosecutable. My phone buzzed again. A text this time. From an unknown number. You can't keep what he didn't want you to have. Don't make me embarrass you again. I stared at it, then handed it to Dana. Dana didn't react emotionally. She just nodded. Good, she said. Threats. Then she looked at me. Quick reminder, she said, almost casually. If you want to see how this ends, stay with me. And if you're listening right now, hit like because the next part is where she thinks she's winning. I almost laughed at that because it was true. Tessa thought she was winning. She was about to walk into the trap like she owned it. The gala was at the Metropolitan Club. Of course it was. Elliot had been a board fixture there. The kind of man who could raise $10 million over dessert and make it look effortless. The gala was scheduled weeks in advance, and canceling it would have been an admission that something was wrong. Tessa didn't want it canceled. She wanted it as a stage. Addison confirmed it when she pulled Elliot's recent emails. Tessa had been coordinating with a PR consultant. She had a talking points document, a literal script. Marcia printed it and slid it across my table. It said, "Introduce Tessa Vale as Elliot's partner of 15 years. Acknowledge Danica as his legal wife. Transition legacy stewardship to the family. Announce restructured foundation leadership. Signal continuity for donors." I stared at the words until they blurred. Legal wife, like I was a technicality. Dana leaned in. "This is where you get your public reversal," she said. "If you can handle it." I swallowed. "I can handle it." Dana nodded. "Good. Because if we do it right, she doesn't just lose, she gets removed." Removed, that word felt like justice. The day of the gala, I wore black again. Not widow black, weapon black, simple, clean. The kind of dress that doesn't beg for attention because it doesn't need to. Dana met me in the club's private corridor with two men I didn't recognize. One had the posture of law enforcement. The other carried a slim case. "This is Special Agent Hargrove," Dana said, "and this is a representative from the bank's fraud division." I looked at them and felt the first real sense of safety I'd felt in days. Authority, not social authority, real authority. We walked into the ballroom together, but not arm in arm. Not dramatic, just present. People turned their heads. They whispered. They watched. And there she was, across the room, in a champagne-colored gown, laughing like she was already the widow. She saw me and her smile tightened. Then she walked toward me like a queen approaching a servant. "Danica," she said, too loud, drawing attention. "I'm so glad you came. I was worried you'd hide." Hide. Dana stepped slightly forward. "Tessa Vale," she said, calm. "We've been expecting you." Tessa's eyes flicked over Dana, then dismissed her. She leaned closer to me, voice low. "You look tired," she murmured. "Grief does that. It drains women like you." Then she smiled, sweet and poisonous. "You know," she said, "Elliot used to say you never fought for him. That's why he loved me. I made him feel wanted. I made him feel alive. You just made him feel obligated." I held her gaze, and I said the only thing that mattered. "Are you going to do your little speech?" I asked. Her brows lifted. "Oh," she said. "You know about that." Then she leaned in, eyes gleaming. "You should listen closely," she murmured, "because it's going to be the last time you're mentioned in his world." She turned and walked toward the stage. Phones came out. Not hidden now. Open. People love a spectacle when they think it's safe. The MC introduced the foundation. Elliot's name was spoken with reverence. A few people dabbed at eyes. A few people looked straight at me to see if I'd break. Then Tessa stepped up to the microphone. She placed both hands on the stand like she owned the room, and she began smoothly. "Elliot was the love of my life," she said. "For 15 years. A murmur went through the crowd. I watched faces shift. Confusion, curiosity, that quiet hunger for scandal. Tessa continued. "Some of you knew. Many of you suspected, and some of you were simply fooled by appearances." Then she smiled, the cruelest kind of smile. "As you know," she said, "Elliot's legal wife is here tonight." All eyes snapped to me. My chest went tight, but I didn't move. Tessa tilted her head. "She did what she always did," Tessa said. "She kept the house, kept the title, kept the image. while Elliot lived his real life with the people who truly loved him. The room made a sound, not outrage, not sympathy, interest, because everyone wants to pretend they're above gossip until it's served on a silver tray. Tessa's eyes flicked over me like she was tasting victory. And because Elliot loved his children, she said, gesturing to Mason and Elle near the front, he made sure the estate would be handled responsibly. She reached into a folder and held up a paper. A will, she announced. The room murmured again. People leaned forward. Tessa smiled wider. Elliot wanted the foundation's legacy protected, she said. He wanted his real family protected, and he wanted the people who used him for appearances to finally step aside. Then she looked straight at me, and she delivered the final dig, clean and deliberate. He told me, she said, that if she had been able to satisfy him like a wife should, he would have never had to look elsewhere. A few people gasped. Someone laughed awkwardly. Mason smirked. I felt my throat tighten, and I didn't look away, because this was the part where she thought she'd won. This was the part where she thought humiliation was the end of the story. Tessa lifted the paper higher. This is signed, she said. This is executed. This is legal. And tonight, we're going to honor Elliot's wishes. Dana stepped forward. Not rushed. Not dramatic. She simply walked toward the stage like she'd done it 1,000 times. Tessa's eyes narrowed. Dana reached the microphone and held up a hand calmly. Excuse me, Dana said, voice steady. Before you continue, I'm counsel for Danica Rosen, and I'd like to clarify something for the room. Tessa scoffed. This isn't the time. Oh, it is, Dana said. Dana turned slightly and nodded to the man with the slim case. He opened it. A small screen was rolled out behind the stage. Not huge, not theatrical, just enough. And then the bank representative stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, my name is Thomas Avery. I represent Northbridge Private. We have confirmed multiple attempted fraudulent transfers from Rosen Archer Holdings in the last 72 hours. The room went silent in a way that wasn't polite. It was sharp. Tessa's smile froze. Dana lifted a folder. We also have confirmed evidence of forged beneficiary change requests, Dana said. Submitted using Danica Rosen's credentials, from devices traced to Ms. Vale's residence. Tessa's voice snapped. That's a lie. Special Agent Hargrove stepped forward then. Calm. Badge visible. Ms. Vale, he said, you are being investigated for wire fraud, identity theft, and forgery. A sound rippled through the room real this time. Not gossip hunger. Fear. Because this wasn't social anymore. This was law. Tessa backed up half a step. This is insane, she said, voice too loud. This is retaliation. Dana didn't raise her voice. She just pressed a button on a remote. The screen behind them showed a clear image. Security footage. A woman in a champagne robe at a kitchen counter, signing papers. Tessa. Then another image. A laptop open with a banking portal. Then another. A text thread. Tessa. I want it done before the funeral. Unknown. That's risky. Tessa. He's dead. Who's going to stop me? The paperwork? The room made a noise like a collective inhale. Tessa's face drained. Mason stood up abruptly. Mom? Tessa spun toward him. Sit down. Elle looked like she might cry. Dana's voice sliced through, calm and lethal. Also, Dana said, for those concerned about the foundation, we have verified that Ms. Vale billed the company for fictitious consulting services totaling approximately $10 million over 2 years. Gasps, whispers, someone muttered, oh my God. Tessa's eyes darted around the room, searching for allies. There were none. Because money people don't protect you when you become a liability. Special Agent Hargrove stepped forward again. Ms. Vale, he said, please place your hands behind your back. Tessa's voice cracked. You can't. He didn't argue. He simply reached for her wrists. And that's when she snapped, because the mask couldn't hold anymore. She turned toward me, eyes wild, voice sharp enough to cut glass. This is what you are, she hissed, cold, bitter. A woman who couldn't keep her husband, so she hides behind paperwork and cops. He didn't love you. He endured you. I didn't flinch. I stepped forward just slightly, close enough for her to hear me without the microphone. You came to my husband's funeral, I said quietly, and tried to take my life in public. I let a beat pass. Now you're going to lose yours, I said. In public, her mouth opened. No words came out, because for the first time since I'd met her, she was out of control. Agent Hargrove cuffed her. The click of metal in that ballroom was the loudest sound I'd heard all week. Mason looked like he'd been punched. Mom, what did you do? Tessa twisted toward him. I did it for you. Elle started sobbing, covering her face. People stepped back from them like contagion. Dana leaned into the microphone one last time. Danica Rosen, she said, is the managing member of Rosen Archer Holdings. She is the controlling authority over the estate vehicles. All claims will be handled through counsel. Any harassment or misrepresentation will be prosecuted. Then Dana turned and gestured toward me, and I walked to the microphone. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply looked out at a room full of people who had been ready to watch me be humiliated again. And I said, calm, clear, and final, Elliot made mistakes. A murmur. I held up a hand slightly. But he also left protections. And anyone who tries to steal from this estate will be treated as what they are. I let the silence sharpen. Criminal, I said. That word landed like a stamp. Tessa was led away, still trying to twist her head toward me, still trying to find the line that would hurt. But the room wasn't listening to her anymore. They were watching me. Not because they loved me, because power had shifted, and everyone can feel that. Afterward, the consequences moved fast, because once fraud is proven, the polite world stops pretending. The bank froze every account touched by the attempted transfers. The board held an emergency session and issued a statement distancing the company from unauthorized personal entanglements. Donors pulled back from anyone connected to Tessa like they were avoiding smoke. The foundation launched an internal audit, and the numbers Marcia traced became official. 9.8 million siphoned through fake invoices, tax misreporting, misuse of charitable funds. And when the IRS got involved, things got ugly in a way no social apology can fix. Tessa didn't just lose the estate claim. She lost her life as she knew it. Her townhouse lease was seized as part of the investigation. Her accounts were frozen. Her PR consultant dropped her before sunrise. Even her friends disappeared, because people love drama until it stains them. Mason and Elle tried to contact me 3 days later. Not to apologize, to ask what would happen to them. Dana handled that too. They're minors, she told me. But they're also witnesses. They'll be protected. They may also be pulled into court for testimony. I sat at my kitchen island again, the same place where I'd been shaking days earlier, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction. Finality. Because here's the part that people don't like to say out loud. When someone humiliates you in public, they're not just trying to hurt you. They're trying to make you small forever. They're trying to make the humiliation the permanent version of you. Tessa tried to do that to me in a church. Then she tried to do it in my hallway. Then she tried to do it on a stage in front of a ballroom full of money and witnesses. And she failed, because she made one mistake people like her always make. She assumed the woman who stays quiet is weak. She assumed paperwork means powerless. She never once considered that paperwork is what makes handcuffs possible. 2 months later, Dana called me with an update. Tessa's attorney wants a deal, she said. I stared at my coffee. A deal for what? For reduced time, Dana said. If she pleads, how much time? Dana paused. We can push for prison, she said. Real prison. And based on the amounts and the charity angle, she's not walking away clean. I closed my eyes. I thought of the church again. The lilies, the front row, the way she'd said real family. Then I thought of the ballroom, the click of cuffs. I opened my eyes. Push, I said. Dana's voice turned almost gentle. Okay. By the time the court date came, Tessa looked different. Not less pretty. Just smaller. Because confidence is easy when you think you're untouchable. It's harder when you're waiting for a judge. She glanced at me once in the courtroom, and I could still see the old cruelty trying to rise. But it didn't have oxygen anymore. She didn't get to speak to me. She didn't get to perform. She didn't get to tell her version. She got facts, charges, numbers, evidence, and a sentence that matched the scale of what she'd done. When it was over, Dana walked with me out of the courthouse. The air outside was bright, ordinary. New York didn't pause for anyone's personal apocalypse. Dana glanced at me. "You okay?" I took a breath and let it out. "I keep thinking about the funeral," I said. How sure she was. Dana nodded. "They always are," she said, "until reality shows up." I looked out at the street. For the first time in weeks, my chest didn't feel tight. Not because I'd forgiven anything. Not because I'd healed. Because the story had a consequence that matched the violation. And because everyone who mattered had seen the shift happen in real time. That night, I went home to my penthouse and stood in Elliot's office again. The forced drawer had been repaired, the lock replaced. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I walked to the window and looked out at the city, and I realized something that felt brutal and freeing at the same time. My husband had lived a double life, but the woman who tried to steal my real one didn't get to keep it. Not the home, not the legacy, not the money, not the story. Because the second she tried to take it publicly, she gave me the only thing people like her can't survive. Witnesses. My name is Danica Rosen, and this is what happened when I was pushed beyond restraint. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this story.